and welcome to video 5, bearings. In this video I'm just going to talk a bit about bearings, talk about bearing diagrams and reading a bearing diagram. So I have an example where we'll draw a bearing diagram, but we won't actually complete the question. So let's start by just reviewing bearings. Bearings are a measure of how far around from north you are positioned, so that you are away from an original point, based on north being 0, and therefore once you've done a full rotation you're back to 360 degrees. You have two types of bearings. You have 3-figure bearings and you have compass bearings. So I'm going to talk about the 3-figure bearings first, and they are basically just numerically written as 3 figures. So for example, a 3-figure bearing of 070 is somewhere here. You can see it falls between that 045 and the 090. That's our 3-figure bearing. And I've placed these common values on here. You don't need to remember them all, but it's good to know the common ones of east, south, and west. And north, of course, which is 00. And then, so that's a 3-figure bearing. Another example of a 3-figure bearing would be, say, 268 degrees. You can see that that is slightly south of west. So here, and there's our 268 degree bearing. Now, additional to that, you have a compass bearing. A compass bearing is written as representing the gap between two of our common north, south, east, west bearings. So here's an example of a compass bearing. North, 30 degrees east. So what this is describing is that we start at north, which is here, and then we head around 30 degrees. And that gives us our north 30 degrees east. And if I write this down, north 30 degrees east is equal to 030 degrees as a 3-figure bearing, or a true bearing. And so our compass bearing of north 30 degrees can be represented by that. We typically start with north-south and then finish with east-west, but that doesn't have to happen, but you'll see that 99.99% of the time that does. And here's another example. South, 70 degrees east. So we start at south, we move around 70 degrees, and that is here, 70 degrees. And so south, 70 degrees east, you can see, if we get in here and just make some notes, I know the diagram is getting a bit messy, 70 degrees away from 180 towards 90, this is approximately equal to 110 as a true bearing. Well, I say approximately, it is equal to 110 as a true bearing. So if you have these bearing diagrams, you can really make any bearing and represent it visually, and it's quite easy to calculate then. And that's usually the biggest problem I find with people working in bearing context, is that they don't draw a bearing diagram and find it very hard to visualize in their heads. Let's look at a simple example of how to draw some bearings out. Angela sails 20 kilometers on a bearing of 140 degrees and then travels north 35 degrees east for a further 10 kilometers. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just approximate in my head where I should start for this diagram to be reasonable on my page. So 140 degrees is going to be in this direction approximately. North 35 degrees east is going to be in that direction approximately. So I'm going to start Angela here in the top corner of my page. And I'm going to start by drawing my little compass diagram. Now, with a different colour, I'll draw Angela's journey. Now keep in mind, this doesn't have to be perfectly accurate. You may choose to use a scale and a protractor, and it might be important. I'm not going to do that for this question. I'm just going to draw 20 kilometres on an approximate bearing of 140 degrees. And so I'll write this down as 20 kilometres. Now the important things to come out of here are that this angle, because it's 140, this is 90, and this is 140, and so this is 50 degrees, which means that this is also 40 degrees, and there's some information that we can get from our diagrams. I'm going to rub that 140 degrees out there so that I can draw the second point. So we've got point A there, and now she's at point B. We'll draw our second compass, and now she's travelling north 35 degrees east, which this time is in this direction. She does that for about 10 kilometers, or for exactly 10 kilometers. And now I'll finish off again with the compass diagram. So I've got all the information I need here. I can later on simplify my diagram down as I need to. But because this is north 35 degrees east, I know that's 35. I know that this is 40 because it's alternate angles to that 40. And I know this is 50 because that's alternate angles to this 50. So I've actually got some information here. I know that this inside angle is 75, which may well be important to me. We'll see where the question leads later on, perhaps. Ultimately, though, it ends with Angela being here. This may be above her original position. It may be below her original position. I don't really know. But either way, I can deal with the question because I have a good diagram. So there it is. Bearings explained. Hopefully that helps you answer Bearings questions. All the best.